Welcome to another in a series of NJAPM webinars. Today's topic is turning callers into clients, how to handle phone inquiries. Randy Albert and Michelle Weinberg are the presenters. Randy's an attorney and Michelle is a licensed marriage and family therapist. They practice as Westfield Mediation. They both took NJAPM's 40-hour training some years ago, and they were featured in one of our first webinars in October of 2018 when they talked about choosing mediation as your career and building your practice. Today we'll take questions at the end. You can enter questions also in the Q&A function or raise your hand during the question period. So welcome Randy and Michelle, and the program is now yours.
Well, thank you very much for allowing us to do this. So we came up with this topic of focusing on the calls that we get and how to turn them into clients. Mostly because we wanted to show people what we do and find out, how people thought about them, get your feedback, to spark a discussion about what's the best way to turn callers into clients, to kind of provide more of an example of how we do it than a model of how everyone should do it.
And we have created a poll to get some feedback from all the participants. Very short, 3 questions. And we're just looking to share some information. It'd be helpful for us, and we thought it'd be helpful for others just to know how other people sort of rank in relationship to yourself. So Carl can put the poll up. So question number 1, how do a majority of your clients find you? And there's 5 choices: attorney, therapist, client, prior client, online search, or other advertising. And you can take the poll under the poll section on the bottom row of the Zoom call. The second question, how many inquiries do you average per month? 0 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20, more than 20. And the third question, what percentage of inquiries turn into clients? Less than 10%, 10 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 50, more than 50. So we'll just give you a few minutes to finish up the poll, and then we'll start our program. Okay, so you can continue to do the poll if you haven't finished yet. We're going to start discussing what happens in Westfield Mediation. So we have a receptionist that answers our phone, and then they can transfer it to wherever we are, because most of the time we are not in the office. We go in the office to see the clients when they have an appointment. So we just get a call that says, hey, Michelle, someone's on, so-and-so's on the phone for you. They're asking about your services. So we're going to pretend we're on the phone, but we're going to be referring to notes sometimes too. So you wouldn't see that if we were on the actual phone. So I get the transfer and I say, hi, this is Michelle Weinberg of Westfield Mediation. How can I help you?
Hi, I'm not really sure where to start. I actually haven't even really said this out loud before, but I think my husband and I are headed for a divorce, and I sort of heard about mediation, but I don't really know what to do.
Sure, I understand. You made a good choice in picking up the phone and calling. We get this call a lot. You are certainly not alone. It may be helpful if I explain a little bit about the process, and that might help answer some of the unknowns and some of your questions. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that would be very helpful.
Okay, great. So first, let me get a little information from you that will help me help you. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. What was your name?
Randy.
Hi, Randy. And what's your spouse's name?
Dan.
Okay, and do you have any children?
We do. We have 2 kids, ages 10 and 6.
Okay, and how long have you been married?
14 years.
All right, and how did you hear of Westfield Mediation?
Well, honestly, my neighbor just went through a divorce, and she used a shark of an attorney, and it was a long mess, a long, hot mess. So I was Googling opposite of shark attorney divorce, and I came up with mediation. And then I found your website, and I really liked your website, and I saw you had good reviews.
Oh, great. Thank you for that. Yeah, a lot of people find us online. It's quite common. Again, you're not alone in that. And you're right, mediation is a much more amicable process than litigation. And what's a phone number I can reach you at, just in case for some reason we get cut off?
908-123-4567.
Okay, great. So now I'll explain to you about mediation. Mediation can be a much better process than litigation. It's faster, it's less expensive, it's confidential, and it can be less stressful. Couples are more likely to follow the agreement that they come up with in mediation because they developed it themselves and it wasn't thrust upon them by a judge in a court. So here's how it works. You and Dan come together for all of the meetings. Right now, we're doing all the meetings virtually via Zoom. At some point, hopefully in the near future, we're not sure when, we may start meeting in person again. And if that happens, then we would all meet together in the same room for all of the meetings. But right now, we're doing everything virtually. So you will be on the same screen as each other, but you don't necessarily have to be in the same room as each other. And I explained the process of divorce in New Jersey, how it works with the courts, the system that you have to go through, how mediation works, and how Westfield mediation works. This is what I can do for you. This is what I can't do for you. I learn about your situation, and I answer any questions that you may have. After that, we make plans for future meetings. So that's the first meeting, and it tends to be the same for everybody. The future meetings would address a parenting plan. That's what's happening with your kids on a day-to-day basis, special occasions, extracurricular activities, religious upbringing, sort of anything and everything related to the kids, we try to address. After that, we talk about your finances. So what's happening with all your assets and your debt. So your house and your 401k and your credit card and your cars and bank accounts and anything and everything financial, we help address. And after that, we move on to support. So there's child support, which is mandated by the state of New Jersey. So we help you figure out what those terms are. And then there's alimony. It's also now known as spousal support. And we help you see if that's warranted. And if it is, we help you see, how much and how long. And if you want to do something different than that, that doesn't include alimony, and you want to divide your assets differently, we can help you address that as well. And lastly, anything else that's important to you that you want included in your divorce agreement. So sometimes pets are an issue, or a family heirloom you want to make certain is designated a certain way. So we help you address that. And you end up at the end of this process with something called a Memorandum of Understanding. And that's just a fancy term for a report that reflects the agreements that you've reached in mediation. And that's how it works.
That is a lot. That is a lot. How long are the meetings, and how long does this whole process take?
So the meetings are about an hour. Generally, the process takes between 4 and 6 meetings in total, including that first meeting where I do all that explaining of how it all works. Meetings are scheduled at your convenience, so you can get it done very quickly if you'd like, or you can stretch it out over a longer period of time. That's up to you. Often clients take 2 weeks in between meetings because they need to think about things or do some research or find a paperwork of some sort. But that's up to you. You can schedule sooner if you'd like, or you can make it longer if you need more time.
Well, I don't think we're in any big rush. I'm not even really sure we're getting a divorce. I'm still really not sure what we're going to do. I'm just trying to get a handle on the whole process. I really just don't want to go through what my neighbor went through. She was really a wreck at the end of the process. And I think there may even have been some domestic violence in their relationship.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Generally, if there is domestic violence, then mediation is not appropriate. With domestic violence, the dynamic between the two parties has been skewed. And we expect that both parties are on equal footing to contribute to the conversation, and that's just, and making decisions about their new futures, and that's just not happening if there's been a history of domestic violence.
Oh, okay. We don't have any issues like that. Also, I know I keep talking about my neighbors, but my neighbors, they really spent a lot of money on lawyers, and I just don't want to do that. How much does this process cost?
Our fee is $250 per hour. It's pay as you go, no retainer required. You pay at the end of each meeting for the time that you used. So generally, the process takes between 10 and 15 hours in total. That includes the 4 to 6 meetings and the time I spend outside of the meetings writing up that document I mentioned, the Memorandum of Understanding.
So what does that end up being?
So it's about $2,500 to $3,750 in total. We track, and that's what most of our clients are able to spend the time and money on.
What payment do you accept?
So we take it all. Whatever you have, we'll take now. Lately, it's been Venmo a lot with COVID, whatever's easier for you. So we take credit card, we take checks, we take cash, whatever you can make work, we'll make work with you.
Is there a free consultation so that we can see if this is right for us?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that. We don't offer a free consultation, though I'm happy to answer any questions now on the phone and talk to Dan if he wants to call me as well, and I can answer any of his questions. The first meeting is our usual fee of $250. We provide a lot of information during that meeting, and we feel that that has value.
I make a lot more money than my husband. Am I going to wind up paying for this?
How you pay for mediation is up to you. We can certainly discuss that during mediation as well. A lot of times couples pay from a joint marital account. They feel that's the most fair way, but we can work with whatever decisions you come up with.
Do you have openings now? How far out are you booking appointments?
So our schedule is different each day. We flex our schedule each day and each week. And we try to best meet our clients' needs by doing that. So we'll give you some times. If you give us some times that you're available, we'll try to meet during those times. Like I said, right now we're doing everything over Zoom. So schedules are a little more flexible, more so now than they ever have been. But we can usually see you within a week or two. We send you the Zoom link, you click on the link, and then we start the meeting.
Great. Do you have evening hours or weekend hours?
Well, we do have evening hours. We do not have weekend hours.
Are you meeting in person at all?
Not right now. Right now, all our meetings are virtual. We're doing everything over Zoom. We hope to, at some point, resume seeing clients, but not at this moment.
Would I need to do anything before the first meeting? What do I have to bring to that meeting?
So you don't need to bring anything to the first meeting. Now during COVID, I would send you and Dan an intake form that you each fill out separately and send back before the first meeting. And that's all you need to do. And then you don't need to bring anything to the first meeting. Sorry. There's some paperwork that later on you need to do, but we always give you a heads up of, this is what you need for the next meeting, and this is what you're going to need in the future. So we review every step of the process as you go along, but for that first meeting, you just show up and we'll take it from there.
Am I going to end up paying child support and alimony because I make more money?
That's something that needs to be figured out during the process of mediation. There are a variety of factors, and income is one of them, and we'll figure that out as we get to that point.
I just think our situation is unique because I make more money than my husband, and I'm worried about losing all the money that I work so hard for.
I understand. It is not uncommon, actually, for one spouse to make more money than the other. And part of the benefit of mediation is that there's a lot of flexibility in how you end up making decisions. So your divorce agreement doesn't have to be your neighbor's nightmare of a divorce agreement. It'll be Randy and Dan's agreement. And you have the ability to work things out the best way for the both of you, including the finances. And it's hard for me to speak specifically at this point. Dan's not included right now, and some of these specific conversations need to happen once the process gets started and you're both involved in the conversation.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just worried and unsure about what I should do. Thanks for all this information. It's just a lot to take in. I think I'm just really not sure what to do. I'm going to talk to my husband some more.
Okay, I understand. Would it be helpful if I send you some information about divorce mediation? You can share it with Dan if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. What's your email?
It's randyrules@gmail.com. RANDI rules.
Okay. So I can send that to you. If you have any other questions or Dan has questions, I'd be happy to talk with him and give him an overview, just like I did with you today. And then you can reach back out. I'll send you the information. You'll have my email address, so you can always give me a call or email, whichever is easier for you.
You know, I'm sorry, I just have one more question. Do I
Sure.
still need a lawyer if I use mediation?
Sure, we get that question a lot. We do recommend that you use an attorney for this process as well. It is not required. You can legally get divorced without using an attorney. You would represent yourself in court. It's called pro se. You would have to fill out all the paperwork as well. But we recommend that you do use an attorney. Your attorney would be a review attorney, which is a divorce attorney acting in a more limited role. And they tend to charge significantly less money because they're doing less work. It's a very important role, but limited for a short amount of time, kind of like the closer that comes in on baseball. You know, they have a specific role and they're there, very important, but less involved than the whole process. Attorneys are your legal advocates. They're on your side and they can help you complete the paperwork that's needed for court and actually accompany you to court as well. And one of the main differences between an attorney and a mediator is that a mediator is neutral and works with both of you at all times. And an attorney is only for you. They're your legal advocate and they are representing your best interests. We do have a list of mediation-friendly review attorneys in the area that we can pass along to our clients. They know our work. They won't make you start from square one and redline your whole agreement. They know you've been through mediation, but they still act as your legal advocate.
Thanks so much for taking all this time to talk to me today. I actually feel a lot better. This has been helpful. I'm still a little worried, but I feel better.
Good. Yeah, there's lots to figure out, I know. So I'll send you the information about the divorce mediation, and then you can reach back out, like I said, whatever's easier for you. If and when you're ready, you can contact me by email or give me a call. And like I said, if Dan has questions and he wants to reach out, I'd be happy to speak to him as well.
Thanks so much. I'm gonna share the information with Dan and I will be back in touch to set up an appointment.
Okay, great. That sounds great. Take care.
Okay, so that ends call number one, like the intro call of somebody who doesn't really know anything about the process.
Right. And now we're going to do call number 2.
Right into the next call. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, our phone is just ringing off the hook. Okay. Hi, this is Randy at Westfield Mediation. How can I help you?
Well, I'm not really sure you can. My husband Joe called last week and told me kind of like how this all works. So I sort of know how mediation works. He said he really wants to do mediation, but I'm not sure it's necessary. We kind of agree on most things, and no offense, but it seems like a waste of time and money because we really don't have that much money and I don't want to waste it on all of this.
Well, thanks for reaching out. I'm sorry I didn't catch your name.
Oh, it's Michelle. Joe gave me your number and told me to call you to ask my questions. Like I said, he really kind of wants to do this, and he told me the general gist, but he didn't really want to go through it all because we kind of get annoyed with each other the longer our conversations go on.
Well, that can happen. I'm so glad you reached out. Mediation can work for couples who have a strained relationship and don't talk that much. Having a neutral third person actually can really help the conversation. You're more focused on the future rather than the disagreements that you've been having. You don't have to have those same disagreements over and over again with the third person there. So it helps promote a better amicable relationship for the two of you after the divorce is finalized. So just remind me of your situation.
So Joe and I have been married almost 10 years. We have 3 kids. Their ages 4, 7, and 10. And we separated a couple months ago.
All right, I remember now. Thanks for reminding me. So, well, it's certainly up to you. You know, mediation is a voluntary process. You can always try it and stop if you feel it's not needed. The value of mediation is that sometimes we ask questions that you haven't considered. Sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. We work with a lot of clients that have encountered a lot of different scenarios, and you can benefit from their experience. So we give examples of what has worked or not worked in various situations, and you can make an informed decision about what would be best for you and Joe. Sometimes clients think they've worked something out, and then they come to mediation and they hear something I say and they decide they want to do something differently. The example I always give is Thanksgiving. Sometimes, everyone has to decide, what are we going to do with Thanksgiving, especially with the kids. So what's happening with the kids on Thanksgiving? And you and Joe, you may have sat down at your table and talked about this and come up with a plan. And then you come into mediation and I might say, some couples have done X, some couples have done Y. And then you hear that and you think, oh, I might like to do that instead. And you scrap the plan that you came up with and go with plan X instead. That actually happens a lot. And since you have children, you need to come up with a parenting plan, and we help you do that. We help you come up with a weekly schedule, a holiday schedule. We help you decide other issues like insurance, education, college, religion, extracurricular activities. And we raise issues that you may not anticipate, so you don't have to wonder what to do later when they come up. And so we do that for the parenting plan. We do it also for the financial plan. In fact, you might wind up saving money in the end because you most likely won't return to court in the future with more lawyer fees and more court fees because you've reached an agreement in which you both had input. So all the bases will be covered and you're less likely to change the agreement in the future that you helped create today. And the agreement that you come up with in mediation has built-in flexibility to anticipate that your kids' needs are going to change over time and your agreement can be changed without having to go back to court.
Oh, wow. That is a lot to think about. I mean, that was a lot of information. So we already kind of have a parenting plan because we've been separated for a few months. But I don't think our plan is as detailed as what you're saying. And I don't think we're going to need something that detailed because we're getting along. Well, we mostly get along. We don't really talk that much, and that helps us get along better. We mainly text.
So that's okay. A lot of couples, married and divorced, use text to communicate. Since you have kids together and they're on the young side, you're going to have to continue to communicate for a long time. So a parenting plan takes some of the need for constant communication out of the way because you can just follow the plan. Of course, a plan on paper and the reality of the day-to-day isn't the same, and exceptions are going to come up and kids' schedules change or your work schedule may change from one week to another and adjustments have to be made. But the parenting plan is there, designed to be there when you're in disagreement. So no parenting police is going to follow you around and make sure that the kids are at mom's house on Monday or dad's house on Thursday. And so, if you want to play it more casually, you can. But when you're in disagreement, it's helpful to have a more detailed parenting plan to fall back on. So if you both want the kids on Thursday, there's no need to go to the mat about it. You can just follow the written plan. It's helpful to make the plan now, actually, while you are getting along and communicating, even if it's just by text, just in case that's not the situation in the future.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I think we may have it covered. I mean, we figured it out, I guess, for the past few months. So why wouldn't we always get along? I guess we can do it now. What would change in the future?
Well, no one can predict the future. And if you never have an issue, then you may never have to look at the plan. But I've been doing this a long time, and relationships tend to change over time. They ebb and flow, sometimes when new partners enter the picture. So there's a good chance that at some point, for some reason, there's going to be a disagreement that could be easily resolved and not become an issue if you had a more detailed parenting plan. And rather than just winging it for the next 14 years, it may also be helpful to your kids to have a more consistent plan so they know what to expect. Kids tend to cope better with the change of separation and divorce when they know the plan. So, okay, it's Thursday, I'm at mom's house, things like that. A more consistent parenting plan may make this whole change easier for your kids. Your 4 and 7-year-old may need a visual calendar, while your 10-year-old maybe can understand the concept of calendars a little better.
It just seems like you're making this more complicated than it has to be. Well, but we do need to figure out child support. I mean, we had sort of a gentleman's agreement kind of thing in place, but I'm not sure if that's great. And we have, I don't really think it's enough, quite frankly. And we haven't talked about camp, and that's really expensive. We do need some help with the finances.
Well, child support's a formula that's mandated by the state. So I gather all the information and let you know the number. And we also help you decide on all the other kid expenses that child support doesn't cover, sometimes like camp. And that can be a lot because kids are expensive.
Yeah, kids are expensive.
So, yeah, so, you
I'm
know,
not, yeah, I don't know if our current amount is enough. I feel like I'm not getting enough from him, actually. But I'm worried if I push him too hard, then he'll pay nothing, and then I'm really screwed.
well, like I said, child support is something we can address in mediation. There's a minimum amount mandated by the state, but parents can agree on an amount that's higher than that. The part of New Jersey that we live in has higher living expenses than some other parts of the state. So sometimes parents are able to agree on a more realistic number that more accurately reflects their actual expenses.
Oh, that would be great. I didn't realize that I might be able to get more. We've mostly decided the finances because we don't really have that much. Like I said, he's keeping the house and I moved in with my parents. We haven't really talked about retirement accounts. I think I have a 401k and he might have a 401k and a pension. I don't really know. Is that something you can help us with? Do we have to go to an accountant? Because like I said, this just seems way more complicated than it needs to be. And we don't want to spend money on mediation and accountants and attorneys. Like it's just too much.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we do. We help you calculate child support. We come up with a plan for all the kid expenses. We also go through your other assets and debts, like your retirement assets, and we come up with a plan for dividing them. You can consult an accountant, and we do provide you with a list of mediation-friendly accountants that we worked with, or you can use your own accountant. And we address all of those financial issues in mediation. And I understand your concern about costs because, mediation is a lot less expensive than litigation, but it's not free. We usually meet 4 to 6 times for an hour, and the whole process, including writing up the agreement, is usually about 10 to 15 hours. So at our rate of $250 an hour, it's about $2,500 to $3,750 for mediation. The one difference between mediation and litigation is that it's pay as you go. So in mediation, you pay for the time you used at the end of each session, and you can separate the meetings in a way that works for your budget. In litigation, you have to put down a retainer, generally $3,000 to $5,000, and the lawyers subtract out as they use their time.
Really? You think we're going to need 4 to 6 meetings? It feels like we already have a lot of things decided. I don't think it's going to take that long. We don't have that much to divide.
Well, for you, since you said you've already worked out a lot of the issues, the process may move more quickly. I always give everybody a ballpark estimate until I meet them. But since you only pay for the time you use, the cost can be more manageable. The more you and Joe decide things outside of mediation, the less of my time you use, the less expensive it will be. Another factor is how complicated your financial portfolio is. If you have a complicated financial situation, then it sometimes takes more time.
Yeah, I don't think our finances are that complicated. Like I said, we don't have much.
All right, so your cost might be below average. It's pay as you go, so you can schedule the meetings in a way that works for your schedule and your budget. And another value for mediation is that we write up the agreement in a way that's comprehensive and flexible. Sometimes clients come in with a plan, but they need help putting it on paper. We can take what's working for you and put it into an actual written agreement that can be referenced if there's a problem in the future. So some people look at mediation as a way to protect themselves from future problems, a way of guarding against kind of a he said, she said situation where, one person says, I thought you meant this, I thought you said that. This way you know what everybody agreed to. It's in the written agreement. And this little effort and expense now can avoid a lot of messiness down the road. But once again, it's up to you. If you think this is something you want to pursue, we can schedule your first appointment now. Or if you want, I can take your email and send you more information on mediation, and you can think about it. Then you and Joe can decide if this is the right path for you.
Well, yeah, can you definitely send me that information? That would be really helpful. And I like what you said about maybe that we could adjust the child support. So I think I'm willing to give this a try. I know Joe really, really wants to do it. So as a way of sort of in good faith for him, I think we should schedule that first appointment and see how.
Okay, great. Okay, so that's our second call with the reluctant caller.
That was excellent. It was excellent. You came across as, very friendly, which of course you are, and you put an awful lot of information into that phone call. So I think people would come away with a really good sense of what they were getting into, and you really answered their questions well. So let me ask you a few questions. Each one was about 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. What is the average time of a phone call that you have with someone?
I think it depends on how many questions they ask. So if they have very specific questions and that's all they want to know, and we answer their very specific questions, then we're done. But if it's someone who calls with no idea about anything or how any of this works, like our first example, then we spend, a good amount, 10, 15 minutes answering their questions and explaining the process.
Is there any limit you put on how much time you're going to talk?
I think, it's not like you have the clock running, but you can say, some of that you can sort of wrap it up and say some of that has to be addressed with both parties present. We can talk about that once you start the process, and then just keep going back to, okay, I'll send you that information, and then sort of wrap it up.
Half an hour, would that be about the max you would talk, or be?
That seems excessive.
Yeah.
That seems excessive. Okay.
Yeah.
No, not half an hour.
Okay. So what do you do when someone starts pushing you for, like, okay, this is my fact situation. What's the answer here? What am I going to get? Or something like that.
So when I think we sort of said in the call, like, oh, that's something that has to be addressed in mediation. You need both parties present. We can't really go into details with just you on the phone, but we can certainly bring it up during when you're in a meeting with both people.
Right. Because some people call, and when I was practicing, they really want to get some information. I'm not sure they ever wanted to get into mediation. They just wanted answers.
Yeah.
And always had to avoid that kind of thing. I notice on your website that you offer a consultation with one party for $125. Now, is that because the one party wants to go now and the other one's going to come later? Or would you do that just for someone who says, look, I can't get my spouse in, but I still want to have this? Which is it?
So I think it's mostly a situation where one person's ready to get divorced and they want more information, and we meet with them to kind of explain how divorce works, how mediation works, to answer their questions. Sometimes, they can take that information back to the person who's not yet ready, and they can decide to come in. But a lot of people are just not in the same place. And, we feel like this way we give them an opportunity to learn and find out their options, and not just tell them, you can't come in because your spouse doesn't want to come in.
Okay.
Right. The intent is to have the participating spouse go back to the more reluctant spouse, share the information, and then have them both come back and start the process together.
And we always say, because there are two of us, we always say, like, if you come in and you feel like, you want to tell your spouse and they want to come in, but they're going to feel like they don't want to work with the person that you've already met with because you told them all these things about us or whatever, or you're now like best friends, they can always choose to work with the other of us.
Okay, good. I noticed, I don't remember how the question of domestic violence came up, the issue of domestic violence. Did you raise that, Randy, or?
I raised it as the caller that that there was domestic violence in my neighbor's relationship.
Okay. And I think it was you, Michelle, who said, well, we don't handle mediations where there is domestic violence. That's not a legal requirement. That's just your personal choice.
That's our choice. So if it was like 20 years ago and it was one time, someone threw something at somebody, like let's say, we might, we wouldn't rule it out. But if it was last week that, the police were called, we don't want to be in the same room, especially if it's an evening appointment with people in that situation.
If no one had mentioned, if the caller hadn't mentioned domestic violence, would you be asking questions during this phone call about a restraining order or if there was domestic violence?
A lot of times it comes up organically when there's been domestic violence. So you'll get a sense of something has come up and you can ask that question directly. If it doesn't come up, then we do the information that we send them specifically says it's not appropriate if there's been domestic violence, and our intake form also has a question about domestic violence. So it does come up. If it doesn't come up in the phone call, it certainly comes up during the process.
Okay. And when you send the intake form or after the phone call, and are they to return that before the first meeting or do they bring it to the first meeting?
So there are two things. Everybody who calls, we send an information sheet so that it just kind of is a one-page sheet about mediation. So that way they have more information on mediation that mentions the domestic violence in case that's an issue. And it also, if they're calling, they're not coming in, it kind of like gives them something to remind them of us. If they're coming in, now during COVID, we send an intake form right before the meeting so that they can fill it out, and then we have it send them back right before the meeting starts. When we were meeting with people in person, we hand it to them when they come in.
Okay. So let me now open it up. I'm going to go to Q&A first, and let's see. Gary Borger says, I was thrown a bit by you telling the prospective client that the state mandates a minimum amount of child support as opposed to telling them that an amount of child support has to be agreed and we help you reach that amount. Any comment?
Well, we run child support numbers based on the state algorithm, and we give them that as a starting point. I think that we take the approach that child support is kind of like the right of the child. So we don't want people to negotiate out of it.
Right. Okay. And okay, let me go to Suzanne English. Where are you, Suzanne? Okay, what about the caller who wants to tell you their sob story? How do you redirect them?
I think you listen for a little bit until it becomes too much, and then you redirect them. Okay, I understand there's a lot to think about. You have a lot of issues going on. Can I send you some information? And then you can decide how you want to proceed. So you don't exactly cut them off, but it's not going to be a half-hour conversation like you suggest, like you had asked about.
Okay. Did you ever consider, instead of having a phone calls, just doing a free consultation? And what were the deciding factors in going the phone call route?
So I think initially when we started this business in 2011, my kids were young and I needed childcare. So it was much easier for me to do a phone call when they called rather than make an appointment to do a free consult to get the childcare. And it's just sort of how we, out of necessity, and then we've just evolved from there and have always just continued with that process.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we give a lot of information in our first meeting, so we feel like it's worth paying for, and yeah, essentially that.
Yeah, I always tried to spend the minimum amount of time on a phone call and get them into my office with a free consultation, just because I thought I had a better chance of converting them to a client. Other people go the other way. always interested in see what motivates them each way. Okay, Glenn, Glenn Milgram, you have a question, your hand is raised, so go ahead and talk.
Okay, the difficulty I have is I'm a practicing litigator, doing matrimonial as well as a mediator. And a lot of times I get a call and the people don't know whether they want me as their litigation attorney or as their mediator. How do I prevent them from telling me the entire story so that I don't conflict myself out as representing them for either the mediation or the litigation?
I mean, I don't think you should be asking us that. You might be asking the general
Yeah,
participants.
I mean, we don't do that because we don't practice law, so we don't have that issue. We never, even though I'm a lawyer, I don't practice, so we are only mediators. So that never comes up for us. Maybe you would need to screen people with a first person, the person who answers the phone before it gets to you.
Well, my question then might be, at what point would you believe that I would be conflicted out of doing mediation based upon the story that the individual tells me if I'm being contacted by one person?
I think what they're saying is, since they're not attorneys, I don't think they have a real answer for your question, Glenn. So
I mean, I think it's tricky. I think you have to kind of, you have to kind of cut people off.
Yeah, if we are an attorney who would like to address that, raise your hand and we can talk about that.
Okay, I'll defer my question at this point. Thank you.
Susan Wright asks, do you limit your practice to domestic violence, or do you also exclude emotional, verbal abuse or drug alcohol abuse? So do you screen out those people too?
We only take perfect, really nice, easygoing people.
Right.
No, I mean, no, we tell people in the beginning that they have to be able to represent their own interests. They have to be able to be their own advocate because we're supposed to be acting as a neutral party. So if there's so much verbal, emotional abuse in their relationship that their dynamic is such that they can't function in mediation, then, we usually can pick that up over time. And we have, there's been times where we tell people that, mediation is not appropriate, it's not working. But we wouldn't exclude someone off the bat unless they had physical violence. In terms of the substance abuse, alcoholism, we actually have like a fair amount of people who are struggling with those issues. And, a lot of it depends on how well they can participate in the process.
Mm-hmm. Michelle, because of your background, are you more comfortable with clients that are more emotional, might have more of these problems than?
I would say so. I would say I'm used to people crying in the office, and Randy still gets upset when they cry.
So do you put that in your questionnaire? Do you cry because no,
we don't. So yeah. So and people, certain clients actually would prefer to work with me because they know that their spouse or themselves has a history of a mental health diagnosis or a substance abuse, and sometimes they prefer not because they're tired of therapists and want a different perspective.
Okay. Here's one from Tony Prinzo. How do you handle or advise clients about items that need outside services, such as real estate appraisal, pension valuation, business valuation?
So I think that comes up when we get to that step in the process. Certainly during the course of mediation, we frequently make outside references, referrals to our collateral contacts, but it doesn't usually come up during the call very often. Most of the things that come up during the call are either a review attorney that they would like a name of, or a therapist that they might need a name of. Those are the two most common.
Okay. Diana has raised her hand, so I'm going to allow you to talk, unmute yourself, and okay, ask your question.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Diana Cerejo. The question, I have two questions. The first one is, I know you mentioned the consultation if you're only interviewing or having the consultation with the individual at a rate of 125. Can you tell me, one, why the reduced rate if you're still spending an hour of your time? Is it because it's less labor intensive?
No, it's only 30 minutes.
Oh, it's only 30 minutes. I understand. Okay, I missed that. So that would answer my other question. I said, the clients might want to skirt that then, and they might want to say, oh, let me keep getting this hour and then I'll feed the information to my spouse. Okay, understood. So it's the same rate then.
Yeah.
Yes, it only takes about half an hour to go through the beginning part of our explanation and answer any of their questions.
Understood. Okay. Actually, I have two more questions. When they're asking you for the differentiation between mediation and litigation, should you tell them, well, the average rate of the attorney is this much, or not divulge that information, let them find out for themselves so you can show them the comparative rates?
We don't say that directly. I mean, you know, if they ask how much a litigated divorce is, we say it's like tens of thousands of dollars. We say that a retainer in this area is generally $3,000 to $5,000. If they ask, you know, I mean, sometimes people are concerned about the price of mediation because they don't realize how much more expensive litigation is. So kind of follow their lead.
Right. Okay. And the last question is, for both of you, I am also an attorney and I'm turning towards being a mediator full time. So how do you handle when they ask you for legal advice if they know that you're an attorney? Should you not give it, or should you give it if you're supposed to be a neutral party?
I don't give legal advice. I explain, you know, the law in New Jersey in an informational way. I mean, this is that roundabout conversation that you can read on the listserv for days on end. But I explain the law in New Jersey. I don't tell them, you know, what they should do.
Okay.
I don't advocate for one person or another. You know, and I say that in the beginning that I'm explaining the process against the backdrop of New Jersey law. I'm not just, you know, making up things, because if you're, you know, you have to do that. But I don't give legal advice.
Right. And then that's when you can defer them, I guess, to their attorney and say, these are kind of questions that you should ask your attorney.
Yeah, and we're very, you know, quick to tell people that they can consult an attorney. Some people just do it at the end, but we say, you know, a lot of people consult an attorney during the process, and you know, especially if they have like a complicated issue, then we encourage them to do that.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, we have a question from Bob McDonald. You say you give a lot of information at the initial session. Do you provide the CIS or any of the worksheets from the CIS at the initial session? Some clients appear somewhat overwhelmed at the amount of information required.
Yeah, and during that first meeting, like I said, we share how divorce works, how mediation works, how Westfield mediation works, and then we always send them all the information after the meeting, so they always have it as a reference. It's our agreement to mediate, it's our rules for mediation that they would need to sign in order to continue that process. And then sometimes we send also a list of documents that they may need in the future, just to give them a heads up of this is what's coming down the pike. But we don't give any of the CIS in the beginning, because for that reason, it is a little overwhelming. And we were already giving so much information, we don't want to pile it on even thicker.
Yeah, we try to focus on that. We're breaking it up into steps. So, you know, the first step is the introduction. The second step is parenting. The third step is finances. So we give the homework in small steps so that it seems not so overwhelming.
Right. When we were talking prior to actually going on air, we talked a little bit about, I guess, your questionnaire that you have sent out, and that over time you've actually reduced it in size.
Oh, our intake form. Yeah.
Intake form. Okay. Yes. Your intake form. Tell me, why did you reduce it?
Because clients were annoyed that they had this 2.5-page document to fill out before the process started. And they are much more amenable to it now that it's 2 pages. It's it's a lot of information in those 2 pages, but it seems easier to digest as 2 pages versus 2.5 pages.
And I guess the other information comes out if it comes out during the mediation session.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing on the intake form, is just to get a sense of who's in their family and whether there's been violence, because a lot of the other things like their income and their assets and, how they, and then the one other question we ask is kind of like what they're looking for in terms of, are they in a rush to get divorced, or, it's also the only place, because we don't caucus. So it's the only place where they have like a little spot where they can write anything that's like their secret. But after that, everything's done as a group. So so most things, like most of the financial information that we used to have on the form, it comes out later on.
Right. Now, Michelle, I understand why you would never caucus, because I think people who do family therapy almost never do that. Randy, is that something you started from the very beginning? Were you always comfortable not caucusing, or is it something you became comfortable with?
Yeah, I don't, I think once you start caucusing, then you start creating this sense that the other person's telling the mediator a secret and you're like forming some bond without me. So I think just for the process to feel more open and fair, then we like to have everybody there.
Okay. Gary Borger, your hand's raised. Unmute yourself and.
I had a comment for Glenn to give him some options with regard to the initial call from a prospective client who may be a mediation client or maybe a litigation or negotiation client, if you will. Some of the options are, first of all, the first thing we do is get both names, the name of the caller and the caller's spouse or significant other or other parent, and run a conflict check in the office to make sure we can even speak to the client. Once that conflict clears, then we give our intake person gives information to the caller about whether they're really calling about mediation or representation. If it's potential, if they're not sure, we give them the option of having a process interview where we can spend a half hour with them on the phone and explain options such as mediation, collaborative divorce, litigation, attorney negotiation, arbitration, but don't discuss any specifics on their case, which requires a little bit of tact on our part to keep them from probing us. Then we get an idea where they're coming from. If they seem to be interested in mediation, then we go down the mediation route and ask them if they want to make an appointment for the other party and them to come in together, since everything is done together. If it's one of the other routes they're going down, then we handle it accordingly.
Okay. We have a few more questions, but let's go to the poll first, poll results. So you might want to cover that.
How do we see it?
You see polls at the bottom?
Oh yeah, got it.
Click on that.
Okay.
Okay, so most people find you online. That is the same for us as well.
Yes. How many inquiries a month? So the most is 0 to 5. Yeah, we're sort of in the middle at this point, in the 11 to 15 range. And what percentage turn into clients?
So Carl asked us this before we came on, and so about, we would say maybe 20% make an appointment, but it goes up to 30% if you give it more time. So some people call, they get the information, 6 months later, they call back, 5 years later, they call back, whatever it is. Sometimes they just need more time. So the initial inquiry doesn't always lead to a client, but it may eventually.
Okay. So that's good information. So let's go back to we have a little bit more time. Jody Davis asks, when do you ask the clients to sign the agreement to mediate?
During the first meeting. Now that it's COVID, it sort of has to be after. But if we're meeting in person during the first meeting, at the end of that meeting, we would say, okay, if you're ready to move on, you can sign the agreement to mediate and we can make the appointment for the next meeting. Or if you'd like to take it home and think about it, you can read it over more carefully, think about it some more, and then you would just need to sign it before calling, when you call back to make the next meeting.
Okay.
I
And during,
think, yeah, now we make them kind of orally, if they're gonna start and we're gonna start and we've just meeting virtually, then we kind of ask them to, whether they're okay with it.
okay. Second one from Jody. The reason I ask is that you are providing them with a great deal of information to look at after the first meeting, and thus giving them a lot of info for free.
Well, no, because they pay for the first meeting.
Okay. Yeah. And during the first meeting, you're really not covering the substantive parts of it applied to their situation. So it's more general.
Correct.
Yeah. Because until you sign that agreement to mediate, there's no confidentiality, but they haven't really told you anything that needs to be confidential. Okay, so let's see if we have anything else over here. Diana Longo, I am going to allow you to talk and now unmute yourself and ask. Your question.
Hi, no, I just had a response when, how do you handle someone who's venting on the phone, is all emotional, they just won't stop talking, they keep giving you information, and that might, for an attorney, create a conflict later on. What I've been taught is that if you take control of the situation, you actually can hear that client or prospective client with a sigh of relief. It can just simply be, yeah, I'm sorry, I really do understand what you're saying. I hear you saying just one or two things, and it sort of relieves them, because then, the important thing is letting them know that you do hear them. So then if you're an attorney, you would say, you could easily just say, but, at this point, I'm interested working with you. However, because, I need to go through certain processes and, explain your situation. But redirecting, letting the client know that, or the prospective client know that you hear, that you understand. And I usually get a good laugh when I tell them that, 3 sentences is good information. More than that, you're venting and spending money on the attorney. So, I mean, those are just some things that I use that I thought I would share. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Last chance here. Okay. So I want to thank you very much. This was very good. I can see why you guys are successful. You have a really nice manner. And so I wish you well, and I hope everyone else has learned quite a bit from today. And we'll see you sometime. I'm trying to think of when the next webinar is. And I think it's the first Monday of next month, when we're going to, Larry Jones and Joni Jones are going to be talking about when you have a client who has an autistic child. So it's going to, I think, be a very good program. And the following that, we're going to be having a mock civil mediation. And what's interesting about this one is we will have our first non-attorney mediator. And so that will be, I think you'll learn something different about how a mediator who's not an attorney does things differently than one who is an attorney. So thanks everyone for attending. Have a great day and look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.